What
Yeah.
drew you to this practice?
I started practicing a long time ago. I mean, a long time ago now. It was probably 1998 or so. So, and then and there was something which I think many of you might have experienced, which is that you just have this, you're just like, there's something right about this, or there's something that is super helpful. And I got more and more into it. It was a real great support for my life. I was like a crazy starving artist at the time. And then I felt the call. Basically, one of my friends was doing her teacher training. And I was like, and I felt this surge of jealousy. Like, what is this? And I just really wanted to know more about the philosophy, more about the alignment, more about the context of yoga. And then it was kind of a deep dive. So I did a teacher training, and then I did my 200, then I immediately did like another 300 hour to do 500. Then I did a whole another 500-hour training. And then just became obsessed basically for a while. And so that's how I started. There's always so much to study and learn. It's endless. It's bottomless. So, and almost as a fuel for that, I became interested in teacher trainings, in helping to lead them and then to develop them, because I just love being in the process of diving into this whole world more and being with folks who are interested in, I mean, the practice itself is great, but it was really fulfilling and nourishing to be in a room where we could ask deeper questions and just go more into it. So yeah, that's kind of sent me on that path.
Nice. Beautiful. So it was like community as well, I guess, for part of that was what drew you in.
Yeah, learning in good company, because, nice to be around. It's nice to connect with folks who are like-minded in the sense that connection rather than disconnection, or, let's live with the questions of why am I here, and ask, like, kind of get under the surface of things, because it's so easy for us to be so busy, and it's great to have a community that can remind us to sort of drop in a little bit, because life is crazy. Yeah.
It's crazy. I can attest to that at the moment.
You are so busy right now.
Yeah, the event, like, it's all going to work, but we'll see. So much to do still. And being 7 months pregnant, that's always something fun and new, kind of like being in the RV. Yeah.
Yeah. From here, but I forgot that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
7 months pregnant. Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah, the bump's getting bigger, but it's all good.
Yeah.
So like with that, when you're a new teacher starting out, what kind of challenges did you sort of come across, and how did you sort of overcome them?
Yeah, there's a lot. One is that as a new teacher, we tend to feel very isolated, because you're in this amazing group for your cohort, for your teacher training, and then you get thrown out into the world, and it's very hard to stay connected. Teachers can be like ships, really connecting. So as a new teacher, I think it's really important.
For a moment.
Oh, am I back?
Yeah, you're back. Yeah.
As a new teacher, it's really important to practice. It's really tempting to sort of try to do all the teaching, but to stay connected to practices, to stay connected to teacher training mates, in order to kind of maintain the community and the network that you've started to develop, because it can feel very alone. And the other thing is to get feedback on your teaching, and to teach. It's hard to sometimes teach right away, because studios don't necessarily trust you when you're just out of school, because you need to kind of, get a little bit more experience. And it's not always easy, depending on where you are, to get hired. So to create your own opportunities to teach, whether that's Zooming with your teacher training friends, or whether it's getting a couple people in the room or a couple people together live once a week, to teach a by donation class, to teach at gyms or to more accessible venues, like that's huge. As a new teacher, it's way too easy to step back, and because we're kind of scared too. It's like, so just teach, find opportunities to do it every week. And it can be your buddy, right? But it's super important to just keep that language and cueing going, and just keep it in you. and alive, so it doesn't get too far away.
Mm, that's a good point. I guess one of the things that probably makes it tricky is it's a very personal practice as well. I don't know, for me, like sharing things that are very personal for me, it's a little bit more vulnerable than um, sharing something, I don't know, business stuff, because it's not necessarily quite as vulnerable, if that makes sense. Whereas yoga practices are so personal, and then that's like one of the joys and why we want to teach it. But if you're a new teacher trying to transition into that teaching stage, it's just like an interesting transitional sort of period you've got to go through, I guess.
Yeah, it is. It
Mm.
absolutely.
So you're staying connected to your practice, and then you mentioned about like doing like Zoom lives or creating things in that. So I know your thing is particularly like course creation, and we're talking about teaching live in your summit presentation and things. What particularly kind of excites you about that sort of online being able to teach?
Yeah, well, the world is really, I mean, as we all know, the world has shifted a lot since COVID.
Hmm.
And as yoga teachers, we tend to be sort of, it depends how you want your career to be, right? And your career in yoga can be anything you want. It could be teaching one class a week to, you know, as a donation class, or it could be teaching 20 classes a week. It could be running retreats. It could be running trainings. But a lot of times it could be doing privates, workshops, corporates. So there's so many options of how it can serve you and fit your life. But that said, a lot of opportunities until now have really been hour per hour. So you have to show up in person to get paid. It's
Mm.
me teaching a workshop. It's me teaching a class. It's me teaching a training. And now that there's more of a familiarity with the online stuff, and it's growing, we can
Mm.
now create more sustainable and resilient careers by leveraging in a smart way and in a quality way, online offerings, whether that's your online library of classes or whether it's your online courses or your online mentorships. There's a way so that we can create value that exists outside of our personal time. And I think that's so important for us. So we stay connected
Yeah.
to the live offerings and the live community, of course, but then also create these resources that can exist outside of us. And doing that well is what I'm keen to support people to do, because I remember I took an online class with one of my favorite teachers about, it must have been 10 years ago at least. And I was kind of like, my teacher is amazing, and this online course is super hard and draggy. And why is that? And that's one of the things that prompted me to go study online learning, because I felt there's got to be a way to do this to just make sure that we're hitting the mark. And so I thought, I want to help people do that. So that's why I went and studied instructional design and stuff like that, was to try to help my yoga community just get really more effective about sharing this amazing, amazing information and knowledge and skills that they had. So
Mm. What does make a great course then?
yeah, well, online,
Probably a big question.
you know what though, but you know, it's actually, I was really surprised. Instructional design is
Mm.
super simple. It makes, once you,
Mm.
it makes total sense. You're like, oh, well, that's obvious, but why didn't I do that before? You know,
Yeah.
so
Why did I have to do this whole course to figure that out?
yeah. No, I created my whole 200 hour without having instructional design. And just like many of us,
Mhm.
I was like, I will give them everything. Like, I just want to give so much. And
Mhm.
actually, not the most effective way for people to take in information. Like, you know, being hit with a fire hose
Mm.
is not always great. Um,
Mm.
so I'd say for online, one of the things for online course development, and I'll stick to online for a moment just because that's a little bit more niche. The
Yeah.
thing makes online different, and guys, I know this is so obvious, but when you're in person, you can be more organic. And this is,
Mhm.
you know, something that some yogis are amazing organic teachers, and they read the room and they feel the energy and they know where to go and they listen to their intuition and they teach in a way that's not necessarily structured.
Mm.
And that can work you're live and get such immediate feedback from people. But when you're in an online class environment and you have to create feedback loops, you have to like map it out, then organization becomes really important. I call it capturing lightning in a bottle, where you have to take all this amazing like and actually kind of put it into little boxes so that it can be digested by your students. So structure and organization becomes key in that process, you know.
Yeah, breaking it down makes sense, and I can see how if you're really excited about the topic, you just want to be like, blah, 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 like, look at all this stuff. And then there's this, and then there's this, and you're just like watching it like, what? That was a lot. Yeah. So making it really like a lot more simple than what you think you probably need to is sort of one of the really big keys. Yeah.
Yeah.
And having it really broken down.
And
Yeah.
I'll give like this, the secret of instructional design. Here it is on a platter, is to think about what you want your students to be able to do as a result of the experience with you. And we often think like, oh, I want them to know this, or I want them to get this. And it's like, no. What do they demonstrate? What do they do? So that, and that helps us as trainers. It takes the pressure off in a weird way, because we stop thinking about ourselves and everything that I know and thinking that that's what I'm to communicate. It's actually, no, what do I want this person to be able to show or demonstrate or do? And that could be talking about philosophy. It could involve things that they know for sure, but that helps us really get clear on our intention for their time with us. And when we do, then we start thinking about, well, what do they already know? What's the gap between here and there? How do I make them do things so that they can get to that end point and be able to do the things I want them to do? And it's super simple, but it's just changing the perspective from being, what do I know and what am I saying, to being like, what are they doing and what are they showing? And just that little switch, you know, might just change the way you approach creating your course, just like that.
Yeah, I guess you want to be really clear on that transformation before you go in, and not have it an entire like your life is going to be transformed from this one course, but like pick something very specific as well. Yeah.
And Jerrett, you're right. It's simpler sometimes. Simple can be helpful. Can really, especially online. People are taking their online course with you, and they've got like their kid yelling, and they're trying to make dinner, and they've got like an email open, and we want to keep it really focused. Which is to say it can't be big and expansive. Like there are 100 hours that are online, which are incredibly transformational, but they have to be built. Yeah.
And that's what you think about, like your modules and the organization and things like that. If you're making something bigger, that makes sense. It makes sense just from a psychological perspective to know that you know what you're about to learn before you learn it, because you're just going in expecting certain informations as well, because our brains aren't very good at switching between things very quickly. We're not designed that way. And I was listening, there's like some study with like the Instagram and like scrolling and things, or just like lots of different information very quickly. Our brains just aren't designed for that. We're designed to be in like a savanna, for example, and we know that that's our environment. We're not designed to change the environment that rapidly, so that from that makes sense to have like very specific things. So what do yoga teachers need to do, or like what sort of position should they be in before they start their first course? Like, is it all right if they're right out of their YTT and they just are like, I've got this course idea? Like, what do they need to sort of do?
It depends who they're teaching. Like if you've just graduated from a teacher training and you have a great course idea, it depends what your expert, like how much of an expert you are in that and who you're teaching. If you know more than the people you want to teach and you're sharing something that's of value, then that's more the indicator rather than less like, I've been out for 6 months. I mean, generally speaking, as a teacher, if you're teaching yoga, you want to feel like it's something that you know here, not just here, I'd say is a good way to like, I think it's good to work with the content that you have, and get it into your own body and get it so that it becomes really part of you, and then impart it, just so that we're not, you know, I guess being hasty. Also, I think as a new, it's good for you to get out there. So I've experienced this question before because people get real freaked out about marketing and niche. You know, like, oh, I'm at 200 hour. There's a million yoga teachers. I have to create my niche. What's my niche? And I've seen students try to approach this from a conceptual idea, like, should I be the yin teacher or should I be the chakra teacher? And I'm kind of like, wait, just go out and teach, because who you are in your teaching voice, it needs some time to develop organically. And by that, I mean that you might have these little like internal inspirations, like this impulse inside, like this divine kind of like calling, pratibha, like this feels, and follow that. And then there's going to be a co-creative element kind of with the universe. Like your teaching voice might take you places that you didn't expect. You might start off thinking, I'm a power teacher. I teach type people how to sweat and get out of their own way. And then you feel a calling to more restorative and accessible practices. Follow that, like allow yourself to be surprised in a way by where you go. So I take your time to, and give yourself the time and space you need to let that happen. So, I mean, I would say that if you're just out of a teacher training, you probably don't want to create a yoga course right away, because you haven't had that time to let that, first of all, live in you and develop and shift. Because we want it to come through you. We don't want the voices of your teacher. We want your voice. Their voice is through you as an instrument. It takes time for that to start to happen, you know.
That makes sense. That's really beautiful as well. Let it settle. Yeah. Embody it first. Awesome. So do you have any, so it's just a quick wee live before we jump into the presentations. Do you have any final advice you'd like to leave new yoga teachers or new course creators with?
This is kind of related to teaching voice, but I would say follow your passion. And if you're not sure about your passion, if it's kind of like that feels like it's too big a word, follow your fascinations. So the yoga world and history and all these, like, it's vast. There's so many beautiful rabbit holes to go into. And so I would say listen to the things that call to you and explore them and let them lead you where they will. And then, I mean, course creation is kind of a technical process. So, but if you have an idea for like an impulse for something, and it is coming from this sort of more embodied place, and you know, it's one of those things that doesn't leave you, then I would say take the steps to do it. I talk to people who this goes for new teachers and course creators. Like, if you're feeling that call to teach or to create, do it. And it's not going to be perfect at first, but jump in there. Especially for teaching, you only learn by doing it. And for the course creators, if you have this idea, start looking for ways to support yourself to make that happen. And because I've talked to a lot of people, it's kind of like, well, I'd like to create it, but I'm blocked, or a year goes by and they haven't done it yet because they're not quite sure how to find those resources. Guys, there's plenty of resources out there for how to build your course. So I would say, like, one little bite at a time, start to walk that path. Because in a year, you want to be able, like, here's my course, not, oh, I didn't do it for another year, right? So be bold sometimes. We're not, okay, here's how I'll summarize that. You only get ready by doing it. You're not going to feel ready before you do it.
Yeah. That makes sense. That's like a very common sort of theme of advice that is coming up a lot. Yeah, and I think I definitely agree. I do all kinds of things terrified, and you just learn from it. Yeah, it's the only way to do it. Yeah,
that's it. So many new teachers say, I want to feel more confident. And I'm like, don't worry about how you feel. Just do your skills. Do the thing, do the teaching. As a course creator, create the course, do it well, you know. But yeah, confidence comes later. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about that feeling.
Just, and if you're worried about that, I think try to dive into curiosity as well. Like, know that you're a beginner at something and it's not going to be perfect, but be really curious in the process. And that kind of, for me anyway, takes a little bit of the fear away out of it because you're like, this is a cool thing that I'm learning and I'm giving myself that space to be able to learn it. And then once you've done it, then you'll be like, oh yeah, okay, I did it. Cool. Now I'm feeling a little bit more confident about doing it again because I've done it that one time already, and then that starts to build. Eventually, confidence isn't innate, which I think is a quite common misconception. There are definitely some naturally very confident people, but I think a lot of us, it's not. That's
And
not
you're
the
so
norm.
confident. Yeah, sometimes you're like, sometimes it's just audacity that seems
Mhm.
like that comes out at you, right? So it's like, yeah, it's not always the confident people who have the most skills. Are the,
No,
no.
they're just jumping into stuff. They just do it. Yeah, I love that. Cool. So your presentation is very about like the different types of teaching online and how to sort of do it. Who watching coming to the summit should be coming and joining to see your presentation?
Yeah, so it's focused on teaching yoga online. So those who are interested in developing like an online presence for online teaching, whether it's like a pre-recorded library or whether it's teaching live online with like Zoom classes and things like that, it'll be a good dive into that. And and the resources, I also provide some resources which are just like technical resources. So if you're thinking about, oh, do I need a platform or like a payment portal or cameras in my space, what should that look like? So we get into some of that, I call it the nitty gritty. We get into some of those real practical questions as well.
Mhm.
So anyone who's interested in that piece and adding that to their kind of roster of what they do should come check it out.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I think it's going to be really helpful for anyone because I've had quite a few people reach out, and the tech side of that nitty-gritty can be something that gets quite overwhelming and holds people back. But I think you break that down really well. So thank you for that. And thank you for talking with me today and coming and making a presentation. It's so exciting. I'm so excited to share it with everyone. So your presentation will be on day 2 of the summit. So if anyone's like, what is the summit she's talking about? And somehow you got here. So All Matt's Taken Yoga Business Summit is this weekend. It's free. I'll put links and things alongside this replay. You can join just allmatstaken.com and come learn all about yoga business. We have 25 amazing speakers, including Rachel.